Welcome to the Thrive Today podcast. Thrive Today is a platform for women who lead and believe. My name is Natalie Bourne. I'm the media host for Thrive Today and the founder of Innovation Meets Leadership. Today, we have the opportunity to catch up with Kristen Nicole Smith. Kristen is the Assistant Director of Student Development at Regent University, and the aim that she has is to help students activate their sense of calling. I love that. And as a founder of An Affinity for Beauty, she has a passion for articulating the truth of the gospel, the goodness of God, and the beauty of his presence. And she was also in one of our more recent Thrive Today journals. And we are going to catch up today talking all about her article. Welcome to the podcast, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I'm glad to be here and just to spend this time talking and connecting more about sustainability and just life in this world.
That's awesome. Well, I do want to jump in and talk about that. I would love to learn just a little bit more about your personal journey. And I would love to know what experiences in your life shaped some of the approaches that you have today.
Yeah. So as you said, I work here at Regent University and then also have a few personal projects. But before doing that, I started off working in ministry and event planning in around 2017. And I did that all the way through till 2021. And I would say that was the time when I really started thinking about the idea of sustainability and really living that way. When you are in full-time ministry and event planning, it just keeps going. And so somewhere around mid-2021 is when I transitioned into higher ed. And how I ended up back here at Regent University working with students in the area of character and then professional development.
Well, you talk a lot about being good stewards of our own life, and I'd love to just spend some time unpacking that. And I'd even love to know, you talked about ministry, which that can be nonstop, always on, 24/7. And then on top of that, event planning, which is intense.
Yeah.
So I'd love to learn how you decided to step back and really, truly become a steward of your own life to start with.
I think stewardship at its core and at its base, particularly when it comes to life, it's the idea that this is a gift, that whether it's from a Christian perspective or another perspective, the life that you live it's a privilege and it's an honor to be here. And it's something that we can use well. And so when I recognize that God gave me this life, I want to use it well, the energy, the attention, the time, all of those things. And so in the same way that I would steward my finances or the way that I would steward my relationships, I also have to steward the way in which I live and format and structure my life. And so then when it comes to the transition from ministry and event planning into where I'm at now, I think I was looking at my schedule of events and kind of how the various things that I value came together. And really came down to I'm not able to keep this up for a long time without significantly depleting my mental capacity, my relational capacity. In 3 to 5 years, I'm going to be completely depleted. And so I personally wasn't okay with that. I don't think it's encouraging to have an outlook on your life that says, this is going in a direction that's not going well. You want to change that around. And so that's really what it came to. I wanted to move. And so that was for community. But then even in that, switching fields and professions, it was just more sustainable for keeping up things that I value.
I love that we're having this discussion because, there's so many books that have come out over the last, several years, some older than others around, like the one that I love that's a little bit more recent is like To Hell with the Hustle. There's another book called Soul Keeping. I mean, there's Elimination of Hurry.
Yeah.
All these books that really speak to what you are experiencing, which is that question we all have to ask ourselves. If I was to continue at this pace for another 6 months or another year, what would that look like? And the reality that stares you back in the face of this isn't sustainable and it's not even healthy. And I love that you went on that journey. I think there's probably some people that are listening today that need to go on that journey as well to say, is what I'm doing going to be a long-term benefit for my health or not? So talk more about that. What did making that change look like for you? Was it just in pace of career? Were there other areas that you decided to adjust as well?
Yeah, I think so. For me, it really came down to the health and pursuit of what I valued. And so it wasn't just, do I have the energy to go to work every day because it's too fast paced, but it was really with work and with my personal interest in education. Am I able to foster relationships and community? And those things weren't really in line. And I think that's for everyone. So some people really value um, security in certain areas. So that might look like a house or finances or something like that. And when it's not coming in line, you're spending too much time with your friends. Where on the opposite, for me, I value community and friends. And so that's something I'm willing to sacrifice for.
Yeah, I know it does. I mean, I love what you said. Like, no, it's almost like you're saying, know your values.
Yep.
Know what's important to you and be willing to sacrifice for the things that are important to you.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's what it really comes down to when you're talking about sustainability and stewardship. It's those values and your pursuit of those values and whether or not they're being actualized and prioritized in your life.
That's so good. Do you feel like these were always values for you, or did this season of just intensity kind of bring them to the surface and helped you to actually understand that you valued this?
They were by no means something I always knew. So for me, it happened relatively early. I think in comparison to a lot of people, it was in college and then right out of college. And so when you're in school, your best friends are right there. You live in community together. They're your roommate. They're close to you. And then my coworkers were those same people. So it was just easy.
Yeah.
Then I graduated. I moved out of town. That community fell away. And I noticed that in my attempts to maintain that community, I'm driving up and down the highway every other week. And before all of this, I would have said, oh, I'm an introvert. Who's in front of me? Who's in front of me? We're good. I can be friends with anyone. It's fine. But then being removed from that community and having to put in more effort to maintain it is when I realized that's what I valued and that I did not have the mental, emotional, spiritual resources to pursue it. And so I needed to be more sustainable so that I could have those resources so that I can pursue what I valued.
I think this is a big challenge for women who are very driven.
Yeah.
To, to kind of balance this idea between work and all the demands and then friendships.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about how you did that.
I think for me, the way that I pursue my friendships supports me in the other things that I value. And so we live in a really segmented society where you have your work life, you have your personal life, and yada, yada. But when those come together and mesh well, I think it's a little bit more fruitful. I don't work with my friends anymore, but they are fully aware of what I do, why I do it. And so they're able to encourage me in that area. When I get together with my community, we can talk about any number of things. We can do girl talk, we can do Bible talk, but they're also going to ask me, hey, Kristen, what project are you working on right now that's a stressor? What project are you working on right now that you're super energetic about? What is it that you're struggling with? And so I find that even though I'm taking time to build community, as they build me and ask me questions, I actually do better at work. And we talk about ideas and concepts that just wouldn't have come up if I'm sitting here typing away at my computer, because we were able to have that real life interaction that then proves the program or the process or whatever it is that I'm making. So that's how it balances for me.
I love that. And I love the fact that you're looking at your life holistically. I think that, we've kind of been sold this lie as women in careers of like, you just put your head down and work hard and you'll go all the way straight to the top. And sometimes we don't stop to realize that this life is a journey and it's not meant to be lived in kind of a bubble, just working as hard as we can and as much as we can. And that's easier said than done. And I know that there are times and seasons where we kind of have to pay our dues, so to speak, but you're leaning into something which is like, how do I sustain my life for years, not for for or even decades, right? How do I live a life where I can live this way for decades and not be feeling like you're always up against the wall, always having deadlines, never have time for friends, never have time for family. I mean, unfortunately, as I'm saying it out loud, it sounds really silly, but a lot of us live this way. I lived this way for years. I used to travel internationally and I was always on the road, and friendships always went on the back burner, and it worked for a season, but it didn't work for the long haul.
I think looking at your life, you really have to find that middle ground. We can be very right here, right now, or we can get caught up in the future and our plans that we miss the right here, right now. But when you find that happy medium and continually remind yourself of the future, what we're going towards, what my goal is, but then also the seeds and the fruitfulness here, then you're able to find that, okay, I'm traveling because this is building that, but I'm going to remember every 2 weeks to do a video call or a lunch or call my grandma, one of those things. So then you have both together.
That's so good. Something Robert Morris says is that unaccumulated Sabbaths add up and they have to be paid for. And so he's talked about moments in his life where he has, either ended up in the hospital or just ended up sick because he wasn't Sabbathing. He wasn't resting. I would love for you just to talk about what do rhythms of rest look like for you? What does downtime look like for you? And how does one really shut it all off?
Yeah.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah. There are a number of different personality assessments, I guess, out there, and we won't go through them all or name them all. But they look at your design and your makeup and a person. And I think when you are more aware of how you are wired and how you work, you better understand what is restful for you. And so if I'm looking at the difference between me and my roommate, she very simply is extroverted. So when she is tired, she has had a long day, she wants to go to a movie, she wants to talk to me, she wants to all those things, and it refreshes her. Whereas I am more introverted, and the idea of adding more things to my schedule to recoup, that's not restful to me at all. And so rest looks different for different people. Some people want a massage. I don't like the idea of people touching me. That just makes me tense. So that's not rest to me. And so, yeah, I think once you know what really rejuvenates and helps you to come back to yourself, then you're able to rest more. That could look like setting your responsibilities aside, or it can look like actually finishing your to-do list and cleaning out your closet. That is a way to bring peace to your brain by putting things in order. For some people.
That's so good. I love the different ways that you're even describing how people are wired. And so it's funny, we were in this meeting several months ago and we were talking about Sabbath.
Yeah.
And someone said, well, staring at a wall all day may be exciting to you. For me, a Sabbath is taking a trip, or a Sabbath is an excursion. And so it's not that we all have to do it the same way, but it's that understand how you're wired, understand when you're feeling depleted, and then begin to pour back into yourself, right? I mean, I just love, and I want to kind of point to your article where you open up talking about in Matthew 11:28 and 30, where he says, are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. What I see when I think about your story is you were right in the middle of purpose, or you were right in the middle of calling, or, doing what you were called to do, but it wasn't pouring life back into you. And so many times I think we can get on this hamster wheel and we can do things because we think we have to, or because we think we're supposed to, or because, whatever the reason, right? Whatever the excuse is that we give ourselves of why we're running on this wheel and can't get off. And there's something really refreshing and just stopping it all and saying, coming to God looks different for everybody. For some people, it is the calling into ministry. For some people, it's being called out of ministry because, and if we think about it realistically, ministry is more than just an occupation. It's a way we live our life. It's the people we engage with. It's the people that we're able to pour life into. And that can happen in any role that you're in. And so us not tying our identity so closely to a role, but instead tying it to God and allowing him to lead us. And I just see that so much in your story in particular.
Thank you. One of the things that continually is in the back of my mind, I studied theology, so this is a little theological. The Westminster Shorter Catechism says that the chief end of man is to glorify and enjoy God forever. Like at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. Calling and purpose kind of stem from that. And I think we can get really caught up pursuing calling and purpose, so much so that we're not enjoying God. We're not glorifying him. We're just out here struggling. And so whatever it is, it's good and it's great that we should work and we should add to this world, but in a way that is enjoyable. Like you should enjoy God in what you are doing, and it should then glorify him when you are enjoying that. And so I think somewhere in that scripture, it talks about not putting anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. And I think so many times we're trying so hard that whatever it is we're taking on, it's just ill-fitting. It doesn't make sense. It's not natural anymore. And it ends up not being enjoyable or something you want to keep up.
That's so good. And I think that we need to help release people from the fake bondage, right, that we put on ourselves of all the, I should have done that, the have tos, the need tos, and just say, like, if you're living, I mean, I know we go through seasons that are challenging, but if you're living under the weight of not enjoying life or not enjoying what you're doing or not getting to enjoy God, or maybe you've gotten so jaded that you don't even feel like you can enjoy God. There needs to be a huge step back there, because he is kind of the chief one that is so important in our life. And if we are living from a place of complete depletion, then we can't enjoy life. We can't be a joy to those around us. We can't make the impact we want to make. We can't show up on purpose. And so it has to start there, right? It has to start with learning your values, learning and understanding your identity, and then walking from that. And I love that point that you made, because so often I think, especially women in particular, we live under the burden of what we're supposed to do.
Absolutely. Something I think that the business world does so well is they periodically evaluate their outputs and what they're doing, and whether or not it is pushing forward the company's mission and vision. And so if something is not in alignment with that, they're like, okay, do we need to cut this? Do we need to put more resources towards this? And just making sure everything is in alignment. But we don't always do that in our personal life. And so we just kind of do what we've always done because it's making someone happy or because it seems like the right thing to do. But it's really not serving a mission or a vision for our lives or pushing forward those values, which we have talked about. And it is actually okay to stop, to reevaluate, to cut some things, which is never easy to hear, especially when you're high functioning and when you're really motivated. You want to do it all, but can be better to not.
So end with this thought. I would love for you to share with the ladies, what does the rhythms of grace, like, what does that look like, the rhythms of grace? How can they infuse this? I know it looks a little different for everybody, but how can they infuse this idea into their own world, into their own life?
Yeah. I think most practically speaking, it is easier to kind of look at each of those words separately. So the grace, simplest form definition, is to have grace for yourself. This is a great concept, and I think it's really fruitful, except for when you're stressed out about not being stressed out. And like, oh no, my rhythm's falling apart. Have some grace. You're going to be okay. You'll make it. And then when you look at the rhythms part, it's really just creating that time and that space. And for me, the easiest way to recognize where there needs to be a rhythm or where there is a poor rhythm is just looking at my habits. And so if we have time for a short story, one of the ways that I recognized a rhythm, I had this habit of kind of just like falling asleep without like getting ready for bed and turning my lights out. And then I would wake up in the middle of the night, kind of discombobulated.
Yep, I do that too.
Right. So it was just this ongoing habit that was making me drowsy in the rest of my day, and it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And so I was like, where's this coming from? Why am I always doing this? And there were two things. One, I don't like getting ready for bed. Some people love nighttime routines. I'm not about it. But then I was also exhausted. And so I realized that I couldn't just go from work to home. Yeah. There had to be something in between for me to kind of come off that a little bit, burn off the stress, process my thoughts that weren't processed anymore. And so I needed to build in time and space for something in between work and home. That's a walk. That's going to the gym. That's the grocery store. Just a buffer, some sort of buffer. And then practically speaking, knowing that I don't like getting ready for bed, just go ahead and wash your face, brush your hair when you're changing out of your work clothes. Like when you get home, just go ahead and do those essentials because you're changing anyway. And so those are just like practical ways to build in a rhythm. You've got one. Is it helping you or is it not helping you? And your habits will tell you that.
Oh, that's so good. I love that we ended on that thought because that's so powerful. And I think that you just bring such a unique perspective to this idea of sustainable living, right? Living a life that is sustainable long-term, and even looking at your habits, reflecting on them, and then adjusting them. This has been so awesome. Kristen, where can people find and follow you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. It's at An Affinity for Beauty, An Affinity for Beauty. And then the website is just affinityforbeauty.com.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Of course.
Well, ladies, thank you for joining the Thrive Today podcast. We want you to be sure to follow, subscribe, and share this episode on your social media platform of choice and tell other women about this leadership podcast. Who can you share this particular podcast with today? Well, look, if you haven't taken the steps to get into community with Thrive Today, I want to ask you a question. What are you waiting for? Head over to thrivetoday.com to learn more about our membership and have more amazing conversations like these. I'll see you next time. Don't forget to thrive.